Shared server configuration. All I want to do here is to look at the different parameters and what they do. The process of tuning a shared server configuration environment is generally quite subjective as opposed to objective. In other words, it's a lot of guesswork. You won't necessarily find any information in Oracle documentation about how to set these parameters, other than probable vague references. The fact is, a lot of it depends on your environment. The best way to find out whether your configuration is tuned properly is to use the performance views. We'll get to those in a later movie. Dispatchers. The dispatchers parameter. A dispatcher is a network dispatcher process dispatching requests and responses between user connections and shared server processes. The shared servers parameter essentially defines the number of shared servers that you will start up on your database when the database starts up. The circuits is really a process or a chunk of memory allocated to each connection, each shared connection. Shared server sessions limits the number of sessions allowed for each shared server. Max dispatchers is the maximum number of dispatchers that can be started up. The same applies to max shared servers as in maximum shared server processes that can be started up. So really what happens is a configuration passes between the minimum shared servers parameter, which is a value set on startup, and max shared servers, and the same applies to dispatchers and max dispatchers. Dispatcher configuration. The dispatcher parameter has specific values such as queue size. You can make the queue bigger to allow a dispatcher process to service more requests and responses, but obviously the larger the queue, the more difficult it is to manage. Sessions is a limit on the number of sessions. Connections is a limit on the number of network connections. Multiplex is basically connection funneling, which allows sharing of connections through a single dispatcher. Pool set to on is essentially connection pooling on the Oracle database, much the same as connection pooling behaves on an application or web server. Tick is a timeout on a shared connection. In other words, when a connection is idle for a certain period of time, it will switch that connection out, disconnecting it from the server process and going to service another active connection. That's the configuration. We can use a simple query to bring up these parameters, as I've already executed, but I'll do it again. And as you can see, we get all the various parameters. Anything called MTS underbar is really an offshoot from an old version of Oracle and simply left in there for compatibility. All my shared server parameters are here. As you can see from here, the dispatcher's parameter, well, let's go back to here, is set up as a string of different options. So if you wanted to put the connection pooling parameter in there, you'd actually put it in like that, and we could make it consistent and use that. And we could obviously put a tick in there of, say, 5 seconds. It's fairly simple to set it up. The only way to really tune the shared server environment, even though it's very limited in the amount that you can tune it, is using the performance views for these specific processes. We'll get to those in a later movie.